The rack was one of the most emblematic instruments of torture in medieval England, a symbol of institutionalized brutality and the use of pain as a tool for extracting confessions. Its structure appeared simple, yet its efficiency in causing suffering was meticulously calculated. The device consisted of a long wooden table, equipped with pulleys and ropes at each end. At the two opposite sides, there were iron or wooden rollers connected to cranks. The victim's wrists were bound to one end and the ankles to the other. When the executioner began turning the cranks, the ropes tightened, pulling arms and legs in opposite directions. The entire body was stretched to its limit, and each additional turn of the mechanism increased tension, slowly dislocating the shoulders, elbows, hips, and knees. The process began moderately, with small rotations that caused intense pain but no immediate ruptures. As the interrogation continued and the answers failed to satisfy the inquisitors or judges, the executioner would turn the crank again. The sound of bones separating and muscles tearing echoed through the room. Soon the body assumed a grotesque posture, limbs stretched, shoulders dislocated, and tendons torn. In many cases, the victim would lose consciousness due to the pain. When this occurred, the session was paused, only to resume once the prisoner regained awareness. The rack was feared not only for the physical suffering it inflicted, but also for its psychological impact. Simply seeing the device was enough to break many prisoners' resistance. Even before being bound, the accused knew what awaited them. The sound of pulleys, the creaking of wood, and the screams of other victims were part of the intimidation ritual. The extreme pain and constant stretching created a sensation of total bodily destruction. Many victims begged for death before the ordeal ended. The physiological effect was devastating. Joints dislocated, muscles tore, ligaments snapped, and nerves were stretched until they lost function. When the body was released, it rarely returned to normal. Arms and legs remained crooked, and victims could be permanently disabled. In some cases, the stretching was so intense that bones partially separated, and the body literally grew several centimeters. If the session continued, veins and arteries could rupture, causing fatal internal bleeding. The rack was not an exclusively English invention, but in England, it became a symbol of the Crown's power over its enemies. It was especially used during periods of political and religious instability, such as the 15th and 16th centuries, when the country was marked by intense conflicts between Catholics and Protestants. The device was stored in the Tower of London, where political prisoners, spies, and heretics were interrogated. One of the most famous cases was that of Guy Fawkes, the conspirator of the gunpowder plot, who was subjected to the rack before confessing his plan to blow up Parliament. Beyond interrogations, the rack was also used by the Inquisition and secular courts to extract confessions of witchcraft, heresy, or treason. The procedure was usually authorized by higher orders, giving an appearance of legal legitimacy. The executioner was seen as the executor of divine or royal justice. In practice, most confessions obtained under torture were fabricated. Victims said whatever was necessary to make the pain stop, even if it meant incriminating innocence or inventing stories. In many accounts, the rack was accompanied by other forms of complementary torture. After stretching, hot coals might be applied to dislocated joints, or the body immersed in cold water to induce thermal shock. The goal was to completely break the victim's physical and psychological resistance. Those who survived rarely returned to normal life. Beyond deformities, they suffered chronic pain and permanent mental trauma. The environment where the rack was used also contributed to the terror. Stone chambers, illuminated by torches and echoing with screams and prayers, created an atmosphere of absolute horror. The smell of blood and sweat filled the air, mingled with the constant creaking of wood under tension. Experienced executioners knew how to gauge force to avoid premature death. The cruelty lay in precision. The punishment had to last. Over the centuries, the use of the rack began to decline. By the 17th century, with the strengthening of laws against torture and the emergence of new ideas about human rights, the device was officially abolished in England. Yet its image remained alive in popular culture and collective memory, representing the peak of institutionalized torture. Even today, the rack is remembered as one of the cruelest instruments ever created, a symbol of the coldness with which governments and religious authorities wielded pain as power. Today, the rack can be seen in museums, such as the Tower of London, preserved as a physical reminder of an era when suffering was considered part of justice. Its wooden and iron structure, marked by centuries of blood and screams, stands as a silent testament to how far humans can go when they believe someone else's pain is a legitimate means to uncover the truth. The rack not only destroyed bodies, but also revealed that historically, power was often exercised with methodical and merciless violence. It remains a historical symbol of torture and a grim reminder that, when institutionalized, suffering can be rationalized to the point of appearing as justice. Each turn of the crank represented the collapse of human dignity before authority. And the sound of dislocating joints continues to echo, warning of what happens when fear becomes an instrument of governance.